Hello ladies and gents. You know, Smash Bros. Ultimate is a fairly balanced game considering its large roster size. Most characters are fun to play and can hold their own in battle. But if you're a longtime Smash Bros. Fan, you know that there have been some pretty terrible characters across the series. So today I want to talk about the worst of the worst, and we'll start by going back to where it all started with Smash 64. Smash 64 only had 12 characters to choose from, and I think it's safe to say that Luigi takes the crown for being the worst. One of his biggest weak points is his speed. He has the slowest ground and air speeds, which makes approaching with him a major struggle. He also has terrible traction, which means he slips and slides all over the place. His attacks don't have the longest reach, which just makes his approach more difficult. And due to his slow falling speed combined with his air speed, he's an easy target for ganking when off stage. Luigi is mostly a clone of Mario, although his unique character traits in power and speed make Luigi worse overall, which just makes Mario the obvious choice between the two. It's pretty apparent why he's widely considered the worst in the game. Let's move on to Melee now and talk about everyone's favorite pink puffball, Kirby, although he's not anyone's favorite in this game because of how pathetic he is. Much like Luigi in the last game, he really struggles with approaching his opponent. Kirby has a very slow airspeed, complemented by mediocre air attacks, and he lacks any good projectiles or ground options in general to make up for this. His dash attack is slow and weak, and the short range of his other ground attacks just add to his shortcomings. He also has issues with KOing opponents. For instance, his forward smash is incredibly weak, and his hammer flip is unreliable due to its tiny sweet spot. And as a cherry on top, he's also a lightweight, meaning he's easy to knock out. Not to mention his completely useless forward and backward throws. Kirby in Melee was a huge downgrade to how good he was in Smash 64. Next up is the big ol' King Koopa, Bowser. While he may be strong and heavy, his attacks are simply too sluggish to make him a viable pick in battle. His large size makes him easy to combo like a giant punching bag. Plus he has very small jumps with a god-awful recovery that's predictable and easy to knock away. But mainly, he's simply too slow and punishable. I'd like to say his fire breath helps him out with some zoning, but it really doesn't. Also, this isn't really related to him being bad, but what was up with his original running animation? It looks like he's aggressively humping the ground, or maybe he's pretending to be a race car. Anyway, Bowser has never been quite as bad as he was in Melee. Now let's talk about Brawl, and we'll start with one that won't come as a surprise to anyone, Ganondorf. Like the previous characters, his slow speed plays a large factor in why he's so bad. But it's not just his movement speed, it's the slow and downright awful frame data of his attacks. He's way too easy to punish, as almost all of his attacks are slow and laggy, and the power of his attacks don't even come close to making up for this weakness. And I feel like I don't even have to mention his abysmal grab range and recovery. He doesn't even have projectiles to help with his approach, and like Bowser previously, his heavy weight and size just make him easy to toss around. There's just nothing good to say about Ganon in Brawl. But Ganon has some competition though, as Jigglypuff in Brawl is just as bad. Jigglypuff is both the floatiest and lightest character in the game. The whole philosophy of her design is to be strong in the air, which is the only area where she's just okay. When on the ground, it's a totally different story. She has the slowest dash speed of the entire roster, and yes, even slower than Ganondorf. And her assortment of ground attacks could be best described as being complete garbage. Her smash attacks are just too slow and leave her wide open to get smacked. And any attacks that you might be able to hit with are simply too weak, or barely have any reach to them. She also had her rest attack nerfed to hell in this game, with it beginning to kill in the range of 70 to 80%, which is awful considering the risk involved when using this move. You might think that they'd make her better in the next game, but you would be wrong. Moving on to Smash 4, Jigglypuff still retains most of her worst traits from Brawl. Some of her attacks had their power improved, like her back air, but even still, she suffers greatly from lacking KO options. She's still too weak and slow. Smash 4 was the first game to receive balancing updates in the series, and yet Jigglypuff never received anything helpful from those updates. It's almost like the developers wanted her to suck. Jigglypuff isn't alone though, because while Ganondorf was still bad in Smash 4, Zelda saw an all-time low here. I mean, up until this entry, Zelda was never really a good character, but she's often considered one of the worst in Smash 4, which I totally agree with. Zelda is supposed to be a defensive character, which means she doesn't have the best options when it comes to aggressive play. The problem is, she doesn't have the greatest tools to play off this strategy. Both of her projectiles are predictable and easy to dodge, and when opponents get up close, she has very few options to pick from that aren't easily punished, not to mention her slow speed, floatiness, and tall nature, all of which make her easy to knock around. The thing is, she actually has some powerful KO moves, primarily with her air attacks, but they have such small and specific sweet spots that they just aren't reliable enough. Any good things you could find to say about this character would have at least 2 or 3 bad things to drag it down. Thankfully, they finally gave her some improvements in Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, when it comes to Ultimate, it's hard to definitively say who the worst character is, since the game is still receiving updates. So no matter what I say, it could eventually change. But if I had to pick one, it would be Little Mac. It all comes down to his non-existent air game and terrible recovery. Obviously, Little Mac is designed to excel on the ground, but it's impossible to ignore that not having a good air game is a big disadvantage. It really boils down to how predictable fighting a Little Mac is. They only have so many options to choose from, and you know they'll be approaching on the ground, so figuring out how to counter their strategy just becomes easier and easier the more you fight them. I feel like the only people who struggle with Little Mac are the ones who either never faced one or haven't taken the time to learn the matchup, which is admittedly quite easy since he's essentially tied to the ground. And because of his horrible recovery, he'll be dying at much earlier percentages than most other characters would be. But I don't need to lecture you all on how easy ganking a Little Mac is. I'm not really sure how or if they'll fix Little Mac, but at the moment, I'd say he's the worst of the whole roster. It's always interesting to see how some characters may be really good in one game and bad in the next, with Kirby being a great example of that. As I said at the start, Ultimate is a pretty well-balanced game, which is great to see after some of the entries doing a pretty bad job at that. Anyway, are there any other characters you guys think are just irredeemable? Sound off in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Catch you later.